Hello and welcome. So today we are finally ready to talk about the latest launch from YSL, which is yet another flanker to the Libre collection. But this one is very special because this one has a touch of fruitiness that others don't, specific to the note of raspberry. And yes, we are talking about YSL Libre Berry Crush. So this is a fragrance that was launched not too long ago. I would say maybe like a month ago, but interestingly enough, at least here in the US, it's been in and out of availability. So sometimes you find it available at a retailer, and at other times it like disappears and it's out of stock for quite a while. But my understanding is that this one is really due to launch on the 22nd of January, which is where we are, and it's going to be available at several retailers. So I wanted to get this review out to you in time for that in case you're interested. So today, of course, I'm going to be giving you a detailed review, but in addition to the detailed review, I'm also going to be comparing it to several of the flankers that I do have in my collection. The first one being the original, which I have in this tiny little bottle because, I was not very much into this one. So I just, decluttered the full bottle, but I needed it for comparison purposes. So I did pick up this one quite a while back. And then, of course, I also am going to be comparing it to the Intense, which I also have in this tiny little bottle. I picked it up quite a while ago. And then we're going to move on and compare it to Vanille Couture, which is the recent launch that we all went crazy over this bottle. And next, we're going to be comparing it to Flowers and Flames, and of course to L'Eau Nue, and last but not least to one of our favorites, which is Le Parfum. So let's go ahead and jump right in because we have quite a bit to cover. But if this is your first time here, I'm Arahi, and I'm your fragrance concierge because I am totally committed to creating the best experience for you. I upload videos multiple times a week, and on this channel, we just love to talk about fragrances. So if that sounds like the type of content that you're interested in and like a good plan, then please consider subscribing, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave a comment. Let's go, fam. All right, so before we get started, of course, let me go ahead and share with you what I have on my lips today because I know you're going to ask. And I also want you to know that in addition to leaving a link to where you can pick up all of these fragrances, the YSL Libre Berry Crush, and if you're interested in any of the other flankers, I will have a link to all of them in the description box of this video. But in addition to that, I am going to leave you all the details of what I'm wearing on my face today in case you're interested in knowing what makeup I'm wearing. But today on my lips, I am wearing a Chanel lipstick, but this is a lipstick formula that I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not very much a fan of, but I loved this color so much that I did pick it up. And, it's been a good experience. It's just that compared to other formulas that I have in my collection, I do prefer those over this one. Not really for anything in specific. I just think it's the feel of the lipstick while I'm wearing it, and also the level of coverage that it gives me. But anyway, so this is from the Rouge Allure Lac collection, and this is 97 Irreal. And as you can see, you just open it and it has this dough for the application. And it's a very nice color. I think it's almost like bordering on a kind of neutral, at least for my tone of skin. So it goes with just about everything. But it does have a hint of like wanting to be like a little bit of a peachy color. And then to go with that, I use my handy dandy that I've talked to you about over and over, my MAC Cork lip liner, which I've had forever. I mean, look at how tiny this one is, but I have like two backups because I've always been concerned that MAC is going to discontinue this one. This one has been around forever, and it goes with any tone of skin, with just about any lipstick shade. I don't know. I just think it is one of the best liner colors out there. But anyway, so I will have everything in the description box for you. All right, so let's talk about this flanker. Now, this flanker is supposed to be one that brings the note of raspberry into the mix of all of the flankers that we've had in the past. I am going to tell you right now that for me, This is more about the original Libre with a note of raspberry. But the brand has described this as having a juicy raspberry, a creamy coconut, and an orange blossom and lavender presence. Now, does this have all of those notes really present? Let's talk about it. All right, so before we start with the olfactory journey, let me go ahead and share with you the bottle. So here is the gorgeous bottle. As you can see, this time they didn't create like a special bottle for this flanker, but as always, it's such an exquisite and tasteful bottle. So this flanker opens very fruity, okay? It opens with that Libre DNA, but somehow there is a very fruity presence compared to other flankers, and we'll get more into that when I compare them one by one. But this one opens up fruity with a very present note of raspberry. That raspberry is realistic. It's not synthetic to my nose or on my skin. It is very juicy. It is sweet. It is ripe. It is very, very realistic. Almost immediately after that, you're also going to start to pick up within that fruitiness, like on a little bit of zestiness. The zestiness is not a very present accord, but it is definitely there. It is like faint and demure in the backdrop of the raspberry. As the journey continues, you're going to start to pick up on a floral presence, and that floral presence brings with it what I would call the real DNA of the original Libre, right? And curiously enough, though, even though I am getting that original Libre, I have to tell you that the floral that I pick up on immediately and the most is the orange blossom, followed immediately by the lavender that we've come to appreciate in all of the flankers and the original of this collection. But what I'm getting the most of is that orange blossom. And the orange blossom will continue to be a little bit in the lead compared to the lavender, all the way to almost the dry down, which I found fascinating. So what that does is that because the orange blossom is more present than the lavender, if you compare that, and I'll talk about that in more detail in a minute, but when you compare this one to other flankers, you're going to find that the lavender here is not necessarily less present per se, but it is less screechy, because there are some flankers like the original that where I find that the lavender was so present that at times it comes across as a little bit screechy. Not unpleasant in any kind of way. I'm just trying to let you know that in this one, you are going to pick up on the orange blossom a bit more than the lavender. Now, as you approach the dry down, you are going to start to pick up on a coconut note. The coconut is definitely creamy, but the thing about the coconut is that, at least on my skin and to my nose, it does not play a critical role, because when I first heard about the fragrance and the way that the brand described it, I was really expecting not just a raspberry note, but also a very creamy coconut that would be present. And while it is present, it is very demure, kind of faint in the background of that raspberry note. The raspberry will continue to be the star all the way to the dry down, but as you approach the dry down, it works very nicely with the lavender, and it brings in what I would consider to be a full-on Libre DNA. So at the dry down, you are going to get like a vanilla infused musk-based scent, where the raspberry has the lead within the fruity notes. The coconut is extremely faint, but it's kind of there like that creamy coconut, with a combination of what we've come to know as the original Libre DNA. That is what you're going to get. You're going to get the original Libre with a note of raspberry, bottom line. That is what you're going to get, unless you really focus and you try to pick up on other notes and other accords. To me, this fragrance is an all-year wear for sure. I think that you can get away with wearing it on a very hot summer day or on a very cold winter day, which makes it quite versatile. This, of course, is suitable for all ages. I don't think that there's any age restrictions here. I think it may be unisex, but leaning heavy to the feminine side. I also think that you can pull it off for any occasion. You can dress it up, you can dress it down. Contrary to other flankers that I have in my collection, and we'll talk more about it in a minute, this is one that I would actually wear even for occasions where I know that I'm going to be perspiring, like Pilates, the gym, yoga, exercising, riding your bike, going for a jog. I think that you can actually pull off this flanker because the scent, while being very much about Libre, it has that added fruitiness, which makes it a little bit sweet. And it also makes the lavender less screechy because at the dry down, you are getting the Libre DNA with that raspberry note and a more demure, a bit toned down kind of lavender compared to other flankers. This, of course, like all the other flankers that I have in my collection, does get me quite the number of compliments. I've used it a couple of times, full day wear, and I can tell you that whenever I wear it, whether I'm in the house or outside, I do get compliments and questions on what I am wearing. I even had someone actually recognize that I was wearing Libre, but they wanted to know what was different about it. Had I layered it or something, because they were picking up on something a little bit different, using their words. And that's something a little bit different, believe me, is that note of raspberry, which mixes very, very nicely with all the other notes and accords. The floral presence will still be there at the dry down, but not in a key role, not to what we're used to. This fragrance also performs very, very nicely because it does get me a bit over a 90-minute strong projection upon spray. And then it does become a skin scent, but that skin scent will carry you throughout the entire day to the tune of 8+ hours. So it's not really a beast mode fragrance at all, but it's not as light and demure as another one of the flankers, which we'll talk about in a minute. All right, so now let's go ahead and compare the new Libre Crush to other flankers. But before we start with that, let me just tell you that I want you to know that for me, this is the least intense of all of the other flankers that I've tried and that I own, with the exception of L'Eau Nue. This one is definitely less intense, and I will show you in a minute, a diagram that shows you other flankers and the level of intensity, because I find it to be quite accurate. But I also want you to understand that in this one, while you are going to get that original Libre DNA, the one key difference is that the lavender here has been toned down quite a bit compared to other flankers, including the original. I think that that plays a role in the change in intensity, even though I say that overall, this one is just a less intense version. The last thing that I do want you to know, which I've already said, but I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying, is that this one to me, this flanker to me, is nothing but the original Libre with that added note of raspberry. That is what I am getting at the dry down and throughout the entire wear of the fragrance. That to me is what we have here. Is it nice? Yes, but we'll talk more about it once I'm done with the comparisons and I move on to the rating. All right, so in comparing Libre Berry Crush to the other flankers in my collection that you may also have in yours, I'm going to go from the most intense to the least intense, right? And if we're going to talk about the most intense, of course, we have to start with Libre Le Parfum. So this is Libre Le Parfum, and in case you're interested in differences in the juice, the camera may not be picking it up accurately, but I can tell you that Berry Crush does have like a berry hue to it, and Libre Le Parfum is a bit of an ambery color, and it is a deep ambery color in my opinion. Now, how do these two compare? Let me just start by saying that besides the obvious of Le Parfum is the most intense of all of the flankers that I've tried and that I own to date, compared to Berry Crush is very demure, not faint or completely, just non-existent on your skin. But compared to Le Parfum, there's quite the difference in intensity. The other thing that I want to tell you is that Libre Le Parfum has a warm, spicy effect to it, courtesy of the note of saffron, which is very much present. In addition to that, the lavender in Le Parfum is quite intense. Overall, it's just that Libre Le Parfum was designed to be, I think, the powerhouse of all of the YSL Libre flankers, because truly this one is a beast. Libre Le Parfum is a beast. So compared to Berry Crush, besides of course the obvious also raspberry note, that is one of the key differences. But I would say that that spiciness brought on by the note of saffron plays quite a role. Now let's move on to comparing Libre Berry Crush to the Intense. And as I told you in the opening, in case you skipped the opening, there's a couple of flankers that I have in this tiny bottle, because I decluttered the big bottle because it was just not working for me. I did not like them. So the Intense is really, do I like it? I like it, but it was not enough of a love for me to justify keeping a full bottle in my collection. So I have this one so that I can compare it for you as they continue to launch flanker after flanker. But I will tell you that for me, when it comes to the Intense, the reason the Intense is as intense as it is, in my opinion, is because of a very dominant and prominent note of lavender. The note of lavender in the Intense is quite present, and to some, like myself, to my nose and on my skin, the lavender is so intense that it can even be a little bit screechy at times, which is why it's no longer a part of my collection. So needless to say, compared to Libre Berry Crush, not only do you not have that note of raspberry that you get in Berry Crush, but you also have in Berry Crush a more demure, definitely smoother, softer lavender presence. Are you going to pick up on the lavender in the Berry Crush? Absolutely. It's the full-on Libre DNA, but not to the extent that you're going to get lavender from the Intense. So to me, that is the key difference. All right. So as it relates now, Libre Berry Crush, if we compare it to Flowers and Flames. So Flowers and Flames, while not being as intense at Le Parfum or the Intense itself, is definitely one that does have its own mark within this flanker collection, because Flowers and Flames, although it focuses on white florals, because that is the key difference, of course, not only do you not have the note of raspberry in Flowers and Flames, but you also have quite the floral bouquet. Flowers and Flames for me, which I've been saying since day one, is more about the Libre DNA with an emphasis on a bouquet of white florals. And at that, the dry down is quite seamless, because you're not going to be able to clearly identify a specific white floral within that bouquet at the dry down. But to me, those are the two key differences between these two, besides the intensity, which we've already discussed. Libre Berry Crush has the raspberry note, and Libre Flowers and Flames is all about the white florals on that Libre DNA. All right, so now let's talk about how Berry Crush compares to the original Libre Eau de Parfum. And this is another one where I have this tiny little bottle. So let me just start by saying that to me, Libre, the original, has definitely more musk than Berry Crush. And it also has a much more present note of lavender, which will not come as a surprise to you at this point because I keep repeating that. And of course, it does not have that raspberry note. But besides that, this to me is definitely, Berry Crush is definitely YSL Libre Eau de Parfum, which is the original, with a note of raspberry. If you just spray it on both of your arms and you compare them, and you're not looking for specifics around notes and accords and the musk level and all that I'm looking for so that I can let you know as part of a review, if you just sniff them, you're going to say, okay, this is nothing but Libre with an added note of raspberry, because that's really what you're going to get. Are you going to say, well, no, this is the Libre DNA with an added note of raspberry and coconut? No, you're not. At the dry down, that coconut is so faint that I was shocked that I could even pick it up, which is why I tried it again for another day to make sure that I was really picking up on that coconut. And I do. It's just very faint. It's creamy and faint in the background. Next, I'm going to do a quick comparison because this one is like a no-brainer, at least I think so, between Libre Berry Crush and the most recent Vanille Couture. So to me, the key difference is, as I talked to you about the olfactory journey, did you notice that I did not mention the note of vanilla in Libre Berry Crush until almost the dry down? That's because in Libre Berry Crush, even the vanilla is a bit more demure than usual. The vanilla does not make its true appearance until the dry down in Libre Berry Crush. And at that, the vanilla is nowhere near as present as what you find in Vanille Couture. And you may recall that when I reviewed this one for you, I told you that I was a little bit underwhelmed, which I still am, because this one does have more vanilla, but I thought that it was going to have much more than what it has. So if you're looking at the Libre DNA, you are going to find that Vanille Couture has more vanilla than your regular, but not as much as you would expect from a flanker that was supposed to have as a main focus the note of vanilla in combination to that Libre DNA. Now, in berry, you are going to find vanilla, but nowhere near the vanilla that you find in Vanille Couture. So again, the differences here are the vanilla, the level of intensity, because Vanille Couture is more intense than Berry Crush for sure. It's more to the tune of like the original Libre level of intensity. You're also going to find that difference, with the raspberry note. And overall, to me, they're just, not completely different, but there's definitely enough of a difference for it to become very, very marked and obvious upon the wear of the scent. And last but not least, let's go ahead and compare Libre Berry Crush to L'Eau Nue. Now, to me, these two are the most different of all of the ones that we've discussed today. And here's the thing, while they will both give you the Libre DNA, it's almost giving you like a different perspective on the Libre DNA, because L'Eau Nue is the lightest, the least intense of all of the YSL Libre flankers and the original. It is truly the least intense. It was designed to be that. This one was designed to be almost like a skin scent from the beginning, and it is. But curiously enough, do not be mistaken, when you spray L'Eau Nue on your skin, you are going to get a scent that does have a certain degree of projection and will give you a certain degree of sillage, because I still get compliments with L'Eau Nue, but nothing compared to a Le Parfum or even with Berry Crush. Now, in addition to the difference between these two of Berry Crush having the note of raspberry and L'Eau Nue does not have that, L'Eau Nue opens citrusy, while Berry Crush opens fruity. Definitely fruity. And while I told you that this one opens fruity with a little bit of a zesty quality to it, that zestiness does not bring the level of citrusiness that I pick up in the opening of L'Eau Nue. L'Eau Nue, it is all about that citrusy opening. And in addition to that, another cardinal difference between these two is the fact that L'Eau Nue has a green quality to it. It is there from the opening throughout the olfactory journey, at the dry down, throughout the wear. There is a bit of a green accord, a green touch to this scent for sure, which you're not going to find in Berry Crush. There is nothing green about Berry Crush whatsoever. But bottom line, those are the key differences between these two. But even though they're just a couple of differences, it makes for a marked difference between the scent of both. So I have to tell you that in thinking about how do I really feel about this new flanker, I'm just going to say this. To me, it just seems that in the process of coming up with the original, they had different versions, one with more vanilla, one with less vanilla, one with a spicy presence, one with more of a floral presence, another one with a specific note of raspberry, increased fruitiness, bringing on the raspberry and the coconut. And they have been launching these throughout the years, which I am here for it. I'm really not hating it, because At the end of the day, with all of these flankers, you are going to get the Libre DNA for sure. Regardless of which one you select, you're going to get the Libre DNA, which is not always the case in other brands with other collections. We've seen flankers that depart completely from the original DNA. So I do appreciate that YSL stays true to the Libre DNA as it relates to their flankers. That being said, this one, I repeat, to me, in my humble opinion, this is the Libre DNA with an added note of raspberry. Would I say that it's an added note of raspberry and coconut? We could say that, but again, with the disclaimer that the coconut is quite faint. Some of you, I dare say, may not even pick up on that creamy coconut. I do, but as I said from the beginning, it is quite faint. Now, overall, I think that this is a very good release. Is it exceptional? Is it? No. Not because of anything, but because we are, again, getting the Libre DNA just with one added note / accord, which is that note of raspberry. Can I justify spending full price for this bottle? If you are a Libre DNA lover, if you are a YSL Libre Radical lover, this one I say is a must because this really is a different spin to that Libre DNA. But if you just enjoy YSL Libre here and there, you don't even have as many flankers, you're not really that much into it, then this one may be one that you want to sniff and decide if you even want to go for it. If you're not much into the Libre DNA, then this would be a pass for me for sure. And if you absolutely despise the Libre DNA, needless to say, this one would also be a pass. I recommend that you pass. Anyway, let us know if you've tried it. For me, again, this is a very good release. It's just not as exceptional as I was expecting it to be. And I think for me, it is more because of the toned down lavender and the coconut not showing up as much as I would have expected it to. You know, even if just through the olfactory journey, we would have gotten more of that coconut, I would have been okay. But it's just so faint from beginning to end, but anyway, this is still a lovely, lovely scent. You're going to get compliments. You're going to be able to wear it. And I give it an 8 out of 10. All right, fam. So we've reached the end of this review, and I hope that I was able to answer all of your questions. If you still have any question, you know where to find me. And I must say that I cannot wait to get opinions on this flanker. I haven't heard many people talk about it. Of course, as I told you in the opening, I will be leaving a link in the description box of this video to where you can pick up any of the flankers, including the new Berry Crush. Stay tuned because, of course, there's more dedicated reviews on flankers that have already been launched in 2026. But in the meantime, and as always, thank you so much for hanging with me today, and I will see you all in the next video.